My name is Madison Thompson. I'm 34 years old, and I run a wealth management firm out of a glass office on the 9th floor of the Kessler Building in Denver, Colorado, with $340 million in assets under management. 9 months ago, my own mother stood up at my cousin's wedding reception, raised a glass of champagne, and told 60 relatives that my younger sister Brooke was my only real daughter. Everyone laughed like it was a joke. I didn't laugh because I already knew something my mother didn't. 3 weeks earlier, I'd found the adoption file, and it wasn't my name printed at the top of it. Let me start at the moment that mattered most, then take you back to where this began. Picture a banquet hall at the Ridgeline Country Club, chandeliers throwing gold light across white tablecloths, the smell of prime rib and gardenia centerpieces. My mother, Carol Thompson, 59, in a navy dress, stood with her glass raised and said, word for word, "To my daughter Ashley's happy day, and to my daughter Brooke, my only real daughter, who's never given me a single gray hair." The table went quiet for half a second before nervous laughter filled the gap. I sat there in a black blazer that cost more than my mother's monthly mortgage payment, and I smiled, because by then I already knew exactly what I was going to do about it. If you're watching this, comment below and tell me where you're watching from and what time it is right now, because what happened next was 9 years in the making. Let me take you back to 1994, the year I was born in Grand Junction, Colorado. My parents, Carol and Richard Thompson, had been married 3 years. 2 years later, my sister Brooke arrived, and in our house, the asymmetry was never subtle. Brooke got the bigger bedroom, painted lavender at 8. I kept the small room with the water stain on the ceiling nobody ever fixed. Brooke got dance lessons 3 times a week for 11 years. When I asked for piano lessons at 9, we couldn't afford it. Though that same year my parents bought Brooke a used Honda Civic for her 16th birthday 4 years away, so it would be broken in and ready. When I made valedictorian at Mesa Ridge High School in 2012, my father shook my hand once and asked if the ceremony would run long, because he had a fishing trip planned. When Brooke finished a community college associate degree 4 years later than typical, my mother threw a catered party for 40 people with a banner reading, "So proud of our girl," hung across the garage. I want to be fair to my parents, because I don't think they woke up trying to hurt me. My father worked as a regional manager for a farm equipment supplier, around $58,000 a year most of my childhood, and I think he believed steady silence was the same as love. My mother had her own mother, my grandmother Eleanor, a cold, transactional woman by every account, and I think Carol repeated patterns she never examined. That doesn't make it right. It just makes it human, and understanding that has mattered more to my healing than any confrontation. There were smaller moments too, the kind that don't sound like much on their own but add up to something heavy over 18 years. The photo wall in our hallway on Larkspur Lane had 11 framed school pictures of Brooke, one for every grade from kindergarten through junior year, and only 4 of me, with 2 years simply missing because we forgot to order yours that year, sweetie. My mother kept a recipe box on the kitchen counter with a card labeled Brooke's favorite, Sunday roast, that she made almost every week. There was no card with my name on it. When I broke my wrist falling off my bike at 12, my mother drove me to urgent care, sat in the waiting room scrolling her phone, and left before the cast had even fully set because Brooke had a dance recital starting at 6. I sat alone in that waiting room with a fresh cast and a Capri Sun the receptionist felt bad enough to hand me, thinking, with a strange, premature clarity for a 12-year-old, this is just how it is. Not with anger. With a kind of quiet acceptance that I now recognize as the beginning of the distance I'd eventually need to survive everything that came later. The binary choice moment came on October 3, 2015. I was 21, a senior at CU Boulder, 6 weeks from finishing a finance degree I was paying for through scholarships, a work-study job at a credit union, and $23,000 in loans. My mother called on a Tuesday night. Brooke, 19, had dropped out of school again and wanted to open a nail salon with a friend. The business plan was 4 handwritten pages. They needed a cosigner for a $40,000 loan, since Brooke had no credit and my parents' credit was already stretched from refinancing the house twice. "You have good credit now, from the internship and the university thing," my mother said. "It's just a signature." I said no. One word, no hedging. I told her I couldn't co-sign a loan for a business with no lease, no licensing, nothing but a Pinterest board. My mother's voice went flat. So you'd let your sister fail because you're too selfish to help her. I said I wasn't letting her fail. I just wasn't signing something that could ruin us both. She hung up, and I didn't hear from her for 9 days. The rupture came on Thanksgiving, November 26, 2015, at the house on Larkspur Lane. I'd driven 4 hours from Boulder, brought a pumpkin pie I'd made myself. My mother set down the carving knife with a precision that scared me more than shouting would have. If you can't show up for this family when it matters, we don't see the point in you showing up for the parts that are easy. She said the salon deal had fallen through and that in her mind, my refusal was the reason. Never mind the lease had never been secured. Then, I don't think you understand what family means, Madison. Maybe you need some time to figure that out on your own. My father stayed in the next room with the football volume too high. Brooke didn't look up from her phone. I said okay, picked up my coat, and drove 4 hours back to Boulder with the pie untouched on the passenger seat. Somewhere near Vail I pulled into a gas station and ate a slice alone in my car at 1 a.m. I didn't cry. I decided I wasn't going to keep auditioning for a role I'd never been cast in. The person who found me that winter was Diane Alvarez, the credit union's branch manager, silver hair pulled into a tight bun, reading glasses on a beaded chain. A woman who'd left protein bars on my desk during finals week for 2 years without ever once mentioning it. 3 days after Thanksgiving, I showed up for my Saturday shift with dark circles I couldn't hide, and she pulled me into her office, closed the door, and said, "Sit. Tell me or don't, but sit." I told her everything, the loan, the phone call, the kitchen, all of it spilling out faster than I meant it to. She didn't say anything for a long moment, just turned her coffee mug slowly on the desk. Then she said, "You made the right call. A bad decision doesn't become a good one because someone you love is begging you to make it." She wrote her cell number on a yellow sticky note and told me if I ever needed a place to sleep, someone to review a form before I signed it, or someone to yell at me over the phone for making a bad decision out of guilt, I should call her before I called anyone else. That winter, Diane became the person who showed up in every way my family had stopped. She sat with me at her kitchen table, which always smelled faintly of cinnamon candles, and helped me build a real budget stretched across my remaining loan disbursements. She reviewed my resume line by line with a red pen, made me rewrite the summary paragraph 4 times until it stopped apologizing for itself. When I got the offer letter from Bradford Wealth Partners in February 2016, a $52,000 entry-level analyst position, she was the first person I called, and she cried on the phone before I did. At my graduation that May, a Saturday, ceremony starting at 10 a.m. under a sky so blue it looked staged, Diane sat 2 rows up in the stadium with a bouquet of yellow tulips she bought that morning, cheering loud enough when they called my name that people around us turned to look, and for the first time since October, I understood that family could be a decision people made about you, not just a birthright you were owed. My mother's only message that day was a text sent at 2:47 p.m., 4 hours after the ceremony ended. "Congrats. Hope it was worth it." I moved to Denver in June 2016 with $1,400 in savings, a used Corolla with 89,000 miles on it, and a studio on Colfax Avenue for $825 a month. A rent number I still remember exactly because I calculated it against my paycheck obsessively for the first year. The apartment had a radiator that clanked all winter and a window unit that barely cut the July heat, but it was mine, entirely mine, in a way nothing on Larkspur Lane had ever felt. I passed my Series 65 in March 2017, sitting the exam on a Tuesday morning before an 8-hour shift, then my CFP exam in November 2019, studying 4 nights a week after 60-hour weeks at Bradford Wealth Partners, flashcards taped to my bathroom mirror, so I drilled formulas while brushing my teeth. Brooke, meanwhile, started a mobile pet grooming business in early 2017, funded with $18,000 pulled straight from my parents' retirement account, no bank involved, just a personal check written from an account meant for my father's retirement at 65. It folded within 8 months. I only knew because my Aunt Diane mentioned it during one of the rare calls where she talked around the silence without ever quite naming it. Year 1 became year 3, became year 6. In 2018, I was promoted to senior financial analyst at Bradford, a $71,000 salary that felt, at the time, like more money than I knew what to do with. By 2021, I'd left to start my own firm, Thompson Capital Advisors, with 2 clients, a laptop, and a shared co-working desk downtown that cost $340 a month. The first year was brutal. 11-hour days, client meetings held over coffee because I couldn't yet afford a real office, a single folding table in my apartment stacked with paperwork. By 2023, we had $210 million under management, 11 employees, and a real office on the 9th floor of the Kessler building. Through all of it, I kept a physical binder, a plain black 3-ring binder I'd bought at an Office Depot for $6.99 in 2015, filled with every unanswered email to my parents, every returned birthday card marked, "Not at this address," when I knew that address hadn't changed in 30 years, every voicemail transcript from Aunt Diane relaying updates I hadn't asked for but couldn't stop wanting. It became less about proof over time and more about not losing the timeline of my own life, a record I could point to and say, "This happened. I did not imagine this." The cold contact came twice. Once in 2019, a text from my mother. "Saw your name in the Denver Business Journal thing. Nice." Nothing else. Once in 2021, a card for my birthday. No note, just a signature. 3 years after the last one had bounced back, marked "returned to sender" by my own request. I didn't respond to either. The reconnection trigger came in March 2024. Thompson Capital Advisors was profiled in a regional business magazine, Denver's Under 40 Wealth Builders, with a photo of me in my office and a line about assets under management crossing $300 million. My cousin Ashley, getting married that September, shared the article in the family group chat with the caption, "Look who's fancy now, LOL." And within 6 hours, my mother had texted me for the first time in 3 years. "So proud of you. We should catch up. Would love for you to come to Ashley's wedding. It's been too long." I almost didn't go. But my husband, Marcus, who I'd married in 2022 and who'd never met a single member of my family, said something that stuck with me. "You don't have to go for them. You could go for you, just to see it clearly one more time before you close the door for good." So I went. 2 weeks before the wedding, my father called, which itself was strange, since he'd initiated maybe 4 phone calls in my entire adult life. It was a Sunday evening, 6:40 p.m., and I remember exactly where I was standing, in my kitchen, stirring a pot of soup, when his name lit up my phone screen for the first time in years. He asked casual, pointed questions, how the firm was doing, whether Denver real estate had gone crazy like they say, whether I owned my house outright, whether Marcus and I had talked about estate stuff yet, wills and trusts and all that. I recognized the shape of the conversation before I understood its content, the way you recognize a storm from the smell of the air before the first drop falls. A week later, Aunt Diane, 3 glasses of white wine into a family barbecue in Grand Junction, accidentally forwarded me a screenshot meant for someone else, a group chat between my mother, my father, and Brooke titled simply Family. My mother had written, at 9:14 p.m. on a Wednesday, "If Madison's doing that well, there's no reason she can't help cover Brooke's condo down payment. $60,000 isn't nothing to us, but it's nothing to her at this point. She owes this family something after everything." Brooke had replied with a laughing emoji and, "She'll probably say no again, LOL, but worth a shot at the wedding. Free money is free money. Worst case, we're back where we started." I sat with that screenshot for 3 days before I called my attorney, Patricia Reyes, who I'd worked with since incorporating my firm. I wasn't worried about being sued. I was making sure I understood exactly what I did and didn't owe anyone, legally or otherwise, and Patricia's answer was simple: nothing. I owed nothing. That clarity mattered more than I expected it to. The scouting visit came 4 days before the wedding. My mother happened to be in Denver and stopped by my house unannounced, a 4-bedroom in Cherry Creek that Marcus and I had bought outright in 2023. She walked through slowly, commenting on the kitchen, the backyard, asking who did our landscaping, asking, almost carelessly, whether the house was in both our names and whether I had one of those trust things people do now. I answered every question honestly and watched her calculate. By the time she left, I understood completely what Ashley's wedding was actually going to be. So I went prepared. I brought 3 things in a slim leather folder, a printed copy of the group chat screenshot, a 1-page summary from Patricia confirming there was no legal claim on any family member's part to my assets, and the adoption file I'd requested from Mesa County Vital Records 2 months earlier, after a comment my grandmother Eleanor had made at her 90th birthday party the year before, half in and half out of dementia, staring at Brooke and saying, "She looks just like her real mother did." I'd chased that sentence for a year. The file confirmed it. Brooke had been adopted as an infant in 1996, a private arrangement between my parents and a young birth mother in Pueblo, something Carol had never told a single person, including, as far as I could tell, Brooke herself. At the reception, after the toast, my only real daughter landed across the table like something dropped from a great height, I waited until the dancing started and the DJ's bass line gave the room enough noise for real privacy, then asked my mother to step outside with me. It was 9:40 p.m., the air outside had gone cool the way Colorado September nights do, and the valet stand was lit by strings of warm bulbs looped between two aspen trees. I opened the folder. I showed her the screenshot first. She went pale, then defensive, said it was just talk, said families discuss things. I showed her Patricia's letter next, and told her, calmly, that I would never be co-signing, gifting, or lending anything to anyone in this family again, and that this wasn't punishment, it was simply the truth I should have told her 9 years ago in that kitchen. She started to argue, and that's when I showed her the last document. I watched something in her face come apart that I'd never seen before, not anger, something closer to fear. "Where did you get that?" she said, and her voice had lost the flatness it always had with me. I told her. She was quiet for a long moment, and in that moment I saw something genuine, real regret, maybe real grief, for a version of her life she'd never let anyone see. "I didn't know how to tell either of you," she said. "I thought if I loved her enough out loud, it would matter more than the truth." It was the most honest sentence she'd said to me in 19 years, and for a moment I almost reached for her. Then she straightened her shoulders and said, "This doesn't change anything. Brooke is my daughter. You don't get to use this to hurt her." And there it was again, the old shape of things, protecting Brooke from a truth I hadn't come to weaponize, only to finally understand. "I'm not going to tell her," I said. "That's not mine to give her. But I'm done pretending I don't know why I was raised like a placeholder in my own house. You didn't love Brooke more because she was easier. You loved her louder because some part of you was always trying to prove the choice you made was right." My mother didn't answer that. She didn't need to. I told her I hoped Brooke found out on her own terms, gently, someday, from someone who loved her enough to tell her the truth instead of managing it. I told her I wasn't angry anymore, and that surprised even me, saying it out loud. Then I put the folder away and went back inside and danced with Marcus for the rest of the night, and I didn't look back at that table again. My father found me at the valet stand as we were leaving. He didn't say much, he never did, but he said, "I should have come into that kitchen in 2015, and it was the only apology I ever got from him, and somehow it was enough, not because it fixed anything, but because it was true." Brooke texted me 2 weeks later, no context, just, "Mom's been weird since the wedding. You know anything about that?" I told her I loved her, and that some conversations weren't mine to start. I left the door open, the way I'd want someone to leave it open for me. I don't know if she'll ever walk through it. That part isn't up to me anymore. Here's what I want you to take from this, whoever's watching, wherever you are, whatever time it is right now. Being disowned doesn't mean you were wrong. Sometimes it means you were the only one in the room willing to say the true thing out loud, and the room simply wasn't ready to hear it yet. I spent 9 years building a life so solid that when my family finally came looking, they weren't looking for me, they were looking for what I had, and there's a specific kind of grief in realizing that. A grief I don't think fully leaves you, but it doesn't have to control you either. The version of me that walked out of that kitchen on Larkspur Lane in 2015, shaking, 21 years old, unsure if she'd made the right call, could never have survived that reunion at the Ridgeline Country Club with her dignity intact. The version of me that walked back in 9 years later, calm, documented, unafraid to put the truth on the table and unafraid to walk away from it too, that's the daughter they should have raised. I didn't get that daughter from them. I built her myself, one budget spreadsheet, one exam, one boundary at a time, with the help of people who chose me for free. And to Brooke, if you ever end up watching this, and some part of me hopes you don't have to, but if you do, none of this was ever about taking something from you. It was about refusing to keep giving something I didn't have to give. I hope, someday, someone tells you the truth as gently as it deserves to be told, and I hope you find out that being loved loudly was never proof you were loved correctly. If this story meant something to you, hit subscribe. drop a comment telling me which part hit hardest, and share it with someone who needs to hear that walking away with your dignity intact is still walking away as the winner. I'll see you in the next one.